Look directly at the truth. Your life is not shaped by external events, but by the thoughts you hold within. What your mind continually nurtures becomes the stage of life you walk into. The world teaches you to think from fear, from lack, from comparison and struggle. But there is another way of thinking, a silent and powerful current, and when you touch it, you no longer see life as a forced sequence of events, but as an infinite space of creation opening before you. This is the Christ mind. Not a religious concept, not a memory of a historical figure, but a sacred state of consciousness already within you, waiting to be awakened. The Christ mind begins when you dare to step out of the old orbit, no longer reacting by habit, no longer interpreting through fear, no longer believing in the limits of what eyes see and ears hear. It invites you to stand at a higher vantage point, where things are not determined by the noise of circumstance, but by the certainty of divine principle. When you stand there, you are no longer swept away by the chaotic stream of the world. You become the master, the creator, the one who carries the invisible law of God into every living moment. This is the beginning of the journey of conscious rebirth. Rebirth is not a one-time event, but a steady process in every thought, every choice. Each time you refuse to react from fear, and instead affirm the truth, you are dying to the old and living anew. Each time you refuse to see life only on the surface and begin to look through it, to behold the perfection at work, you are being reborn. This is not an easy path, but it is the only path that leads you out of the captivity of the world and into the freedom of the soul. You may ask yourself, how can one distinguish the Christ mind from the worldly mind? The signs are clear. The worldly mind always leads to tension, arguments, comparison, and lack, while the Christ mind brings peace, trust, creativity, and strength. The worldly mind chases results. The Christ mind lives from cause. The worldly mind wavers before circumstances. The Christ mind affirms truth even when circumstances have not yet changed. When you hear within a voice that does not tremble, that remains steady without needing justification, that is the Christ mind. The beginning of the journey of conscious rebirth is the acceptance of one truth. Your old mind cannot create a new life. You cannot cling to old ways of thinking and expect a different experience. Like a cup full of murky water, if you dare not pour it out, there will never be room for pure water to flow in. Thus, the first step is the courage to let go of judging things by appearances, to let go of repeating old stories, to let go of identifying yourself with wounds, memories, or what others have said about you. You are not your past. You are not your failures, the criticisms, or the social prejudices placed upon you. You are the divine image God held in mind when he thought of you. And that image has never been lost, only veiled by clouds of mistaken thought. When you learn to think as Christ, those clouds dissolve and the true light appears. It is not something you must strive to construct, but something you must cease resisting so it may shine forth. The Christ mind does not remove you from the world. It gives you new eyes with which to see the world. You still go to work, live in your family, face challenges, but you are no longer the same. You are no longer the passive one controlled by circumstance. You become the still center where external chaos has no power. Where others see crisis, you see opportunity. Where others see failure, you see unfolding. Where others see loss, you see preparation for a greater blessing. This is how Christ sees, and this is how you are invited to see. There is one crucial point. The Christ mind is not about accumulating knowledge, but about transforming consciousness. You may read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of sermons, but if your mind still thinks in the old way, all of it remains in memory and does not become life. The Christ mind is not measured by how much you know, but by how you live. It is measured in how you face adversity, how you face fear, how you remain silent amid noise, yet keep certainty in your heart. Try observing the thoughts that pass through you each day. Where do most of them come from? From fear, from worry, from memory, from comparison, or from the certainty that you are a child of eternal life, incapable of lack, incapable of loss, incapable of rejection? Every thought you hold is a seed. If the seed is doubt, the fruit will be unrest. If the seed is lack, the fruit will be suffering. But if the seed is the certainty that all has already been given, the fruit will be abundance and peace. The Christ mind is the sowing of right seeds, steadfast and unshaken. The beginning of the journey of conscious rebirth does not require you to be perfect. It only requires one decision, the decision to no longer live by the old way of thinking. At this very moment you can choose. Choose to pause, choose to breathe, choose to look within and say, I no longer think as before. I think as a child of God. That decision may seem small, but it is full of power. For once you choose, divine law will uphold you, guide you, and transform you from within. Do not think the Christ mind is some distant ideal reserved for the few. It is already within you like a current waiting to be switched on. As soon as you plug into the source, the light will flare forth, and that source is always present. Every breath you draw is proof that life is flowing. Every heartbeat is the reminder that you have never been separated from the divine. You do not need to search far. You only need to turn inward and begin living from there. This is the invitation to enter the Christ mind, to begin the journey of conscious rebirth. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more ready, but now. For every thought you choose today shapes the world of tomorrow. You are sowing the seeds of your future in every moment. And when you sow with the Christ mind, you will reap a life of peace, creativity, and freedom, the life that has belonged to you since the beginning. The rebirth of consciousness is not about abandoning the world, nor is it about turning away from daily life. It does not mean that you must leave your family, your work, your responsibilities, or the relationships that surround you. The rebirth of consciousness does not take place in distant monasteries or on lonely mountaintops. It happens right where you stand, in the midst of the noisy city, in the current of daily concerns. For true rebirth does not lie in circumstance, but in the way you look at circumstance. And when you look through the law, through divine principle, your whole life begins to change. See, clearly the world teaches you to react. Everything you see, hear, or touch triggers a familiar chain of reflexes. You see failure and feel fear. You see loss and feel despair. You see hurt and close yourself off. But the rebirth of consciousness is to stop reacting by old programming. It is learning to look at things not with the eyes of the body, but with the eye of divine principle. When one door closes, the old mind sees a dead end. The new mind sees an opening. When a relationship breaks apart, the old mind sees loss. The new mind sees the lesson that leads to growth. Rebirth does not change the event. It changes the meaning you assign to that event. And when meaning changes, reality itself changes with it. What has caused you suffering has never been the event itself, but the way you looked at it. A failure is not a life sentence. It is only a mirror reflecting the false belief you once nurtured. A pain is not the end. It is the opportunity to listen more deeply, to open a new layer of understanding about yourself. The spiritual law always operates. Every external circumstance is merely the effect of the seed of thought within. When you understand the law, you are no longer trapped in the spiral of events. You step onto another plane where you can sow new seeds and wait for a new harvest. That is rebirth. The rebirth of consciousness is not denying life, but living it with new eyes. You still work, still love, still face ups and downs, but you are no longer defined by them. You know all things are temporary. All circumstances are only expressions of thought, and you have the right to change that thought. This gives you true freedom. You do not need to run away to find peace. You carry peace into the midst of the world and let it radiate. That is the clearest sign of one who has been reborn. Ask yourself, are you living by old thoughts, or are you ready to see with new eyes? Are you reacting according to the world, or are you choosing to see through the law? This question is not abstract philosophy. It is the key that determines how you walk through each day. Do you dare to pause, to look directly at the circumstance that worries you, and quietly declare, "This is not the final truth. The truth is that I am upheld, I am not lacking, I am not alone." If the answer is yes, that is the very moment your consciousness begins to be reborn. And I want to know, are you truly ready for this change? Ready to put down the old thoughts? Ready to refuse the way of thinking that kept you stuck? Ready to open a new path within your own mind? If you feel that desire, show me with a simple sign. You may write, "I am ready," or simply comment the number 1. Because when you do this, you are not only confirming it to me, you are confirming it to yourself that you have decided to step into a new journey. And I will know I am not speaking alone. I will know of your presence, the presence that is truly precious to someone who creates content like me. I am grateful for that presence, grateful that you have dared to begin the most important step, the first step. The rebirth of consciousness does not come from trying to change everything outside. It begins with an inner decision. Just one moment of pause, one moment of choosing to see differently, and the whole current shifts. When you refuse to agree with fear and begin to affirm truth, the spiritual law immediately moves to open a new path. You do not need to know how, you only need to affirm, and the law will handle the rest. This is the difference between the old self and the new. The old self asks how the new self declares, "I know it is already accomplished." You may think rebirth is a one-time sweeping transformation, but in truth it is a step-by-step process. Every day you have the chance to die to an old part and live to a new part. Every thought you choose is a beat of rebirth. When you choose to believe in truth instead of fear, you step into new life. When you choose forgiveness instead of holding resentment, you step into new life. When you choose peace instead of reaction, you step into new life. It is a step-by-step journey, but each step is precious because it brings you closer to the divine essence that has always been within you. The rebirth of consciousness is not avoiding suffering, but looking straight at suffering and declaring, "You have no power to define me," not hiding failure, but looking at failure and proclaiming, "From here I will learn and grow." Not denying challenge, but standing within challenge with the faith. This too is part of the good plan. When you live like this, you carry the mark of one who no longer belongs to the old, but has stepped into the new. So remember, rebirth is not about finding some distant place. It is about opening your eyes right where you stand. It does not begin tomorrow. It begins in this very moment, and you have the power to choose. You can continue to live in the cycle of old thoughts, or you can choose to see with the eyes of Christ. On one side is the endless spiral of worry. On the other side is the freedom of the Spirit. The choice is yours. If you feel this invitation, give me a sign. A simple "I am ready" or just the number 1 is enough. It is your declaration to yourself that you have chosen rebirth. And when you choose, life will respond. The spiritual law never ignores the decision of a soul. Let that decision begin today. For every thought you choose is the seed of the future you are walking into. Every lasting change requires a foundation. The journey of conscious rebirth is not built on fleeting inspiration or temporary enthusiasm, but on core principles, the unshakable anchors of the spirit. There are 4 principles that form the pillars of the new mind: oneness, forgiveness, non-resistance, and I am. They are not just beautiful ideas, they are the laws by which life operates. When you understand and practice them, you step into a different state of being where peace and strength are unconditional, where you see all things with the eyes of the spirit. The principle of oneness is the starting point. Nothing is separate, no one is left behind, and no moment exists outside of divine presence. The small self tends to draw boundaries, me and others, inside and outside, friend and enemy. But the more separation is emphasized, the more peace is lost. When the consciousness of oneness is lived, you begin to see everyone, every situation, even adversity as part of the whole. Instead of asking who is right, who is wrong, you ask, where does this teach me to see unity? From that perspective, hatred dissolves, comparison fades, and your heart expands. Oneness does not mean blending into sameness. It is the recognition of one source flowing through countless forms. The second principle is forgiveness. There can be no rebirth if the past is still being held onto. Resentment, blame, memories of wounds are chains that bind the soul, keeping the mind from ever rising higher. Forgiveness is not excusing wrong actions, nor is it forgetting what happened. Forgiveness is looking back at the event in a new light, seeing that what once hurt you only had power because you allowed it. When you forgive, you do not free the other person, you free yourself. You do not erase the past, but you change the meaning of the past in your mind. Each act of forgiveness removes another layer of cloud, and you see more clearly the wholeness that was always there. Forgiveness is a decisive act of the spirit, not a weak emotion. It is the courage to declare, "I will no longer let darkness define me." The third principle is non-resistance. The old mind always wants to fight, to resist, to struggle. But resistance only increases the strength of what you wish to escape. When you fear a situation, you give it more power. When you keep pushing away a thought, you are actually feeding it. Non-resistance does not mean surrendering to defeat. It means shifting into another state. Instead of fighting the darkness, you light a lamp. Non-resistance is refusing to give illusion more energy. It is the art of standing still in your center, allowing truth to assert itself and dissolve what is false. One who knows non-resistance cannot be shaken by the world, for they do not give the world the right to control their mind. Their strength lies not in battle, but in immovable serenity, and from there arises the power to transform. The final principle, the deepest foundation, is I am. Every time you utter those 2 words, you are affirming your divine identity. I am is not mere language, it is a creative decree. Whatever you place after those words, the subconscious records as a command. If you say, "I am weak," you imprison yourself in weakness. If you say, "I am lacking," you grant lack the right to rule your life. But if you affirm, "I am life, I am peace, I am one with the source," you open the door for those realities to manifest. The principle of I am reminds you that you are not a solitary individual searching for God, but a living expression of God here and now. Every true affirmation of your essence shakes the old foundations and places you on a new ground. These 4 principles do not exist separately. They are tightly linked like four pillars supporting the temple of consciousness. Oneness opens the heart. Forgiveness frees memory. Non-resistance keeps you in peace, and I am defines your divine identity. When you live in oneness, forgiveness comes easily. When you forgive, resistance fades naturally. When you cease resisting, you hear clearly the I am within. And when you affirm I am, you strengthen oneness. The circle is perfect, unbroken, without gaps. Imagine a person who lives fully in these four principles. Even in adversity, they see oneness, so they harbor no hatred. They forgive, so they carry no burden of the past. They do not resist, so they are not pushed by circumstance. They live in I am so. Every word, every thought carries creative power. They are no longer someone defined by the world, but one who defines the world through their presence. They do not need to search for peace, for they are peace. They do not need to struggle to prove themselves, for their presence itself is convincing. They do not need to ask who they are, for they know I am. The rebirth of consciousness begins when you lay your foundation on these principles. They are not lessons to memorize, but ways of life to practice. Every day you have the chance to test them. When conflict arises, do you choose oneness or division? When wounded, do you choose forgiveness or resentment? When challenged, do you choose resistance or to stand firm in peace when faced with doubt? Do you affirm I am or sink into I am not? Each choice is a step forward or backward in the journey. But with persistence, you will see the power of these principles unfold, renewing you from the root. Oneness, forgiveness, non-resistance, I am. These four foundation stones are the beginning of every work of rebirth. When you live in them, you no longer ask, when will my life change for? You know change has already begun the moment you chose to think and live this way. You do not need to run to find the answer elsewhere. It is already within you. And from here the journey continues. The world teaches you to react. From childhood you were trained to look at circumstances and immediately respond with a chain of familiar emotions. Seeing danger, you feel fear. Seeing lack, you feel worry. Seeing failure, you feel despair. Reaction becomes instinct, as though it were the most natural thing. But it is this very habit of reaction that has turned human beings into slaves of circumstance. When life changes direction, your mind changes direction with it. When the outside is chaotic, your inner world is shaken. You think you are living, but in truth, it is only a cycle of repeated actions pulled along like a leaf drifting on the current. The Christ mind is its complete opposite. It does not react, it creates. Instead of being conditioned by events, it creates new meaning for the event. Instead of being bound by fear, it affirms the truth that rises above fear. The worldly mind says, I am a victim of the situation. The Christ mind says, I am the creator of a new situation. One side is passive, the other active. One side reflects darkness, the other brings light. This is the fundamental difference between living according to the world and living according to Christ. What must be understood is that reaction never produces anything new. Reaction only repeats what you already know. When you are angry, you repeat the old pattern. When you panic, you recall the memories of previous failures. When you doubt, you only feed more doubts from the past. Every reaction is a closed cycle. Nothing creative can emerge from it. But creation is different. Creation arises from a place unbound by memory, unrestricted by appearances. It comes from stillness, from the moment you stop reacting to a firm divine truth, and from there a path that never existed before begins to open. The worldly mind operates on surface cause and effect. It believes only after it sees. It waits for outer signs to decide inner feelings. If it sees money, then it believes in abundance. If it sees health, then it believes in well-being. If it sees love, then it believes in worthiness. But the Christ mind reverses this order. It does not wait for the effect to believe in the cause. It begins from the cause affirming truth, even when the effect has not yet appeared. When Christ faced illness, he did not wait until the body was healed before declaring wholeness. He declared health even while sickness was still present, and it was that very affirmation that caused wholeness to appear. This is not illusion, but the principle of spirit. Whatever is affirmed in truth will become reality in time. Notice the Christ mind does not deny the event. It does not say that suffering, illness, or hardship never happened. It simply refuses to grant them supreme power. The world looks at the appearance and concludes the end. The Christ mind looks at the same situation and declares, this is a door. The difference is not in the event, but in the vision. And it is the vision that determines whether you are a victim or a creator. In life, you have countless opportunities to test this. When facing criticism, the worldly mind immediately reacts: defense, anger, hurt. The Christ mind pauses, does not react, but creates it turns criticism into an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply, or simply affirms the truth that dignity cannot be touched. When experiencing financial loss, the worldly mind worries, panics. The Christ mind says, "My abundance does not come from numbers in an account, but from the infinite divine source." And it is precisely that conviction that opens a new path where solutions appear from unexpected directions. Reaction is always tied to instinctive emotion. Creation is always tied to awareness. Reaction comes from the fearful ego. Creation comes from the united mind. Reaction drains energy. Creation generates energy. When you react, you sink deeper into the old cycle. When you create, you break the cycle and open a new one. That is why the Christ mind is called the creative mind, because it does not repeat darkness, it produces light. This difference is also the clear measure by which you can recognize where you are. Every time you feel tense, restless, heavy, it is a sign you are reacting according to the world. Every time you feel open, steady, clear, even when circumstances have not changed, it is a sign you are thinking as Christ. No one can live perfectly at once, but this awareness helps you return to the right direction. At any moment you can stop reacting and choose creation. The world will always offer reasons for you to react: bad news, a shock, an unjust event. But when you react, you only grant the world more power. When you choose to create, you take that power back. This is the freedom the Christ mind gives you. You are no longer swept along by the current, you become the one steering the boat. You are no longer defined by events, you define the events by the way you see them. The miracle is that when you live steadfastly in the Christ mind, not only does your inner being change, but outer circumstances also shift. Because the spiritual law always operates, creative thought, held firm in faith, will take form in reality. Those who choose creation need not force or struggle for their creation, is naturally supported by the invisible law. They need only stand firm, affirm, and act from truth. Therefore, the difference between the worldly mind and the Christ mind is not a small detail. It is the difference between passivity and activity, between repetition and creation, between reacting in fear and affirming in trust. One keeps you in an endless cycle, the other opens freedom and inner strength. This choice is present in every moment, in every thought, in every smallest reaction, and each time you choose creation instead of reaction, you step deeper into the journey of conscious rebirth, becoming the new being, the one whose light of spirit shines in a way that cannot be hidden. There is a truth that was spoken long ago but is often forgotten amidst the noise of the world. We have the mind of Christ. That statement is not a promise for the future, nor a reward for those who reach a certain level of virtue. It is a present affirmation. It does not say we will have or we will attain. It says we have. Right now, the seed of divine thought lies within you, silently waiting to be awakened. When hearing this, the old mind often resists. How can I have the mind of Christ when I am still full of limitations, full of flaws, full of weakness? But that is the very illusion. You do not need to create that mind. It is already there as part of your essence. The problem is not absence, but concealment. Just as the sun is always present though hidden by clouds, the Christ mind remains whole and unchanging, no matter how thick the layers of mistaken thought may be. When the clouds dissolve, the sun does not appear for the first time. It simply reveals itself, as it always has been. The seed of the Christ mind lies deep in the subconscious, in the very structure of the human spirit. It is the original spark, the essence of oneness, the I am, that has never been lost. No matter how you live, no matter how far you stray, that seed remains, waiting for the moment you turn inward and acknowledge it. With a single decision, a single affirmation, a single thought faithful to truth, the seed begins to sprout. And from that tiny sprout a new life arises, transcending old limitations. Picture the seed of a great tree. From the outside it looks small, dry, insignificant, yet within it lies the potential of a forest. The Christ mind in you is the same. On the outside you may appear weak, fallen, even confused, but within you the potential of creativity, peace, love, and power is already present. All it needs is to be planted in the soil of trust, watered with right affirmations, protected from the weeds of doubt, and it will grow, and one day nothing will be able to stop its expansion. What matters is that you must believe the seed already exists. If you keep thinking you must search for it somewhere else, or wait until you are more worthy, you will always remain outside the door. But when you acknowledge I already have the mind of Christ, you open the way for it to function. Acknowledgement here does not mean praising yourself as perfect, but being faithful to the truth that the divine essence can never be lost. This recognition is the beginning of every deep transformation. The Christ mind does not operate through memory or learning. It operates through direct awareness, through seeing beyond appearances into divine cause. It is not imprisoned in repetition and reaction. It creates from an unshakable foundation. It does not need to prove itself because it is itself the proof. When you begin to allow that mind to function, you discover a strange stability, no longer dependent on praise or blame, no longer shaken by ups and downs, no longer afraid of events. You stand firm not by your own strength, but by a foundation that is beyond you, yet still within you. Some may ask, how can one know when the Christ mind is at work? The clear sign is peace. Not the peace that comes when everything goes well, but the peace that remains regardless of circumstance. When you can look at adversity without fear, when you can forgive instead of resent, when you can affirm truth even when appearances say otherwise, that is when the Christ mind is functioning. It is like an underground stream. You do not see it with your eyes, but you feel its freshness flowing in every reaction, every word, every choice. This seed does not discriminate. It exists in every human being, whether they know it or not, whether they believe it or not. But only those who nurture and affirm it will see its power unfold. Do not be deceived into thinking only saints possess this mind. You have it too. The issue is not that you must become someone else, but that you must stop believing the false voices within you. I am weak. I am inadequate. I am powerless. All of those are just dust covering the seed. Wipe it away and the seed will shine. When you acknowledge the Christ mind within you, a deep shift occurs. You stop searching outside and begin unfolding within. You stop clinging to temporary results and begin living from unchanging cause. You stop asking, why is this happening to me, and begin affirming, from here I will create the new. It is this shift that opens the path of growth. You are no longer swept away by the whirlpool. You become the one at the helm, not by human strength, but by the spiritual law planted within you from the beginning. Let this affirmation echo in your mind. We have the mind of Christ. Let it repeat until it sinks deep. Each time you feel weak, remember the seed is still there. Each time you feel lost, remember the seed has not disappeared. Each time you fail, remember the seed remains waiting for you to rise, and so trust again. One day that seed will blossom within you into a garden free of fear, free of limitation, free of division. Then you will not only know the truth, you will live in the truth. And that is the ultimate purpose of this journey. There is a truth most people never realize. They are living their lives only through reflections, never touching the source. The old mind always looks at effects first, then decides what to think, feel, and do. Seeing the body tired, it believes it is weak. Seeing the wallet empty, it believes it is lacking. Seeing others turn away, it believes it is unworthy. This way of thinking makes you like a mirror, placed before events only able to reflect what has already happened outside. And that mirror, however bright, can never create anything new. The new mind, the Christ mind, invites you to step out of that cycle. It does not look from effect. It thinks from cause. Cause here is not the chain of past events, but the unchanging divine principle. Abundance as inherent health, as inherent worth, as inherent. When you think from cause, you do not wait to see before you believe. You believe, and it is that belief that opens the form. You do not wait for the seed to sprout before believing life is in it. You plant the seed because you know life is already there. In the same way, you do not wait for life to prove itself before believing in truth. You affirm the truth, and the truth will be revealed. Letting go of the old mind is a decisive step. It is not easy. For all your life you have been accustomed to being persuaded by what the eyes see and ears hear. But if you keep letting effects determine belief, you will remain imprisoned in a cycle. Effects reinforce the old belief. The old belief produces more of the same effects. Only when you break that circle by thinking from cause do you open the way out. Effects will change, but first you must dare to affirm the truth, even when outer evidence has not yet appeared. Picture someone who is ill. The old mind immediately labels, I am sick, I am weak, I am about to collapse. And those words become seeds that sow more darkness. But if that person knows how to think from cause, they will affirm, health is my truth. This body is only in the process of returning to balance. That affirmation does not deny reality, but it refuses to give power to temporary reality. It places faith in the unchanging cause, and that cause has the power to dissolve false effects. Or consider another situation. Someone loses a job. The old mind will say, I have failed, my future is bleak. But the new mind says, the old job was only a temporary form. My abundance comes from the infinite source. This loss only makes way for something better. Such thinking is not naive optimism, but affirmation from cause. Abundance cannot be lost, only forms change. And by holding to cause, you allow the spiritual law to lead you to a higher form. The old mind makes people like farmers who only sit and look at dry fields and complain, nothing grows. Meanwhile, the Christ mind is like the sower who knows the sprout has not yet appeared, but life is already there. They sow, they believe, they nurture, and they wait for harvest. The difference lies in perspective. One sees only what has appeared, the other trusts in what is about to appear. And that faith is the bridge from the unseen to the seen. Letting go of the old mind does not mean denying the world, but changing the way you interact with it. You still see events, but you no longer let them define you. You still hear judgments, but you no longer let them become truth. You still face challenges, but you no longer tremble before them. Instead, you look through them, see the divine cause beneath, and choose to stand firm upon it. This is the power of one reborn in consciousness. They are no longer slaves to effects. They become masters of cause. This requires perseverance. The old mind will pull you back many times, whispering that you are only weak, that you should only believe what is visible. But each time you have the chance to choose again. Each time you affirm cause, you weaken the strength of the old mind. And eventually the old reflexes vanish, giving way to new reflexes, naturally thinking from cause, no longer being deceived by effect. An important question: how do you practice this daily? The answer is to observe your thoughts. Whenever you realize you are drawing conclusions based on effects, stop and ask, where is the true cause? What is the divine truth of this situation? Then affirm that truth in words. If you see lack, affirm, I am abundance. If you feel fear, affirm, I am peace. If you feel lost, affirm, I am one with the source. These affirmations gradually reprogram the subconscious, making you naturally think from cause. When your mind grows accustomed to thinking from cause, a miracle happens. You are no longer shaken by events. You enter life with a quiet certainty, like one who knows the sun will rise even though it is still night. Effects will come, but you do not need to be impatient. You know the law is always working, and you need only stand firm in faith. This is the state of freedom. Every soul seeks freedom from the chains of circumstance, freedom to create a new life. Therefore, letting go of the old mind is the greatest decision you can make. It is not just changing a few thoughts, but changing the very root of how you operate. You stop living like a mirror that only reflects. You begin living like the sower who plants. You stop chasing effects. You begin thinking from cause. And when you live from cause, your life is no longer determined by what happens, but opened by what you affirm. This is the beginning of a new chapter where every day, every thought, every word becomes a seed sown into the sacred ground, certain to bring forth a harvest of peace, creativity, and abundance. Human beings have become too accustomed to seeing life with the eyes of the flesh. Whatever appears before their eyes is immediately labeled success or failure, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, trustworthy or suspicious. This habit is so deeply ingrained that many believe it to be truth itself. But truth is never confined to appearances. What you see is only the surface. When you judge by the surface, you overlook the cause behind it. You ignore the law by which spirit operates. That is why so many imprison themselves in suffering, because they have believed that appearances are everything. The Christ mind shows another way to let go of the habit of judging by appearances and begin to judge righteously. Righteous here does not mean the justice of the world not based on social standards or human laws. Righteous means seeing from cause, not from effect, seeing with the eye of spirit, not with the senses. It is the ability to discern illusion from truth. When you look with this eye, you are no longer deceived by passing phenomena, but stand firm in unchanging reality. Consider this example when you see the body in sickness. Judgment by appearance says, I am weak, I am sick. But righteous judgment pauses and affirms health is inherent. Sickness is only a temporary phenomenon. I am not defined by symptoms, but by the principle of life. When you lose money, judgment by appearance says, I am poor, I am lacking. But righteous judgment affirms abundance is the cause. Money is only the form. Form changes, but cause remains intact. It is precisely this way of seeing that prevents you from collapsing and enables you to stand firm and open a new path. The important thing to remember is this: appearances always change. Today you have, tomorrow you lose. Today you are praised, tomorrow you are criticized. Today you win, tomorrow you fail. If your life depends entirely on appearances, you will forever live in a whirlwind of instability. But when you learn to judge righteously, you step into a new safe ground, the ground of truth, where those changes no longer hold power. You no longer ride the waves of emotion, but keep your inner peace unshaken. Not judging by appearances also means letting go of the habit of labeling others. So much of the world's suffering comes from people rushing to conclusions about each other through fleeting actions, words, or appearances. A person making a mistake does not mean they are evil. A person in failure does not mean their whole life is worthless. When you see others with righteous judgment, you see they are not what they have done wrong, but the divine essence still whole within them. This vision not only frees you from resentment, but also opens the way for transformation in the other. For when you behold the good in them, you help call it forth. Of course, the old mind will resist. It will say, "How can I deny what is right before my eyes? How can I believe in good when I see only mistakes?" But righteous judgment does not ask you to deny reality. It asks you not to grant temporary reality supreme power. It reminds you that truth is not found in outer results but in inner spiritual cause. When you hold this vision, truth will gradually reveal itself, and appearances will be forced to change accordingly. Notice even the most difficult situations conceal a spiritual opportunity. A crisis is not an ending but a reminder that you have clung too tightly to appearances and must return to cause. An insult does not truly wound you. It only triggers the old belief that you can be diminished. When you look with righteous judgment, you recognize, "No word can touch my true essence," and thus you walk in freedom. Letting go of judgment by appearances is also learning to be silent before concluding. Instead of reacting hastily, you pause, breathe, and ask, "Am I seeing from appearance or from cause? Is this unchanging truth or just a passing phenomenon?" This question is like a key that opens the door to clarity. It keeps you from being swept away by the current of emotion and grounds you on the foundation of spirit. When you live in the habit of righteous judgment, you will notice something remarkable. Life grows less chaotic, relationships less strained, the inner self less conflicted. For you no longer exaggerate what appearances show you. You no longer believe in illusion but remain faithful to truth. And that truth has the power to correct itself, to balance itself, to restore all things to their rightful order. This does not mean you become naive or deny all problems. It means you no longer give problems the right to control you. You acknowledge what is happening, but you do not identify yourself with it. You see it, you name it, and then you stand firm in the truth that all is within the process of a benevolent cause. That is righteous judgment. In every moment of life you have two choices to see, with ordinary eyes or with spiritual eyes. One sees only appearances and rushes to conclusions. The other sees cause and affirms truth. This difference determines whether you live in anxiety or in peace, in limitation or in freedom. Each time you choose to let go of judgment by appearances, you take another step on the journey of conscious rebirth. And then one day, when this habit becomes your new instinct, you will recognize a profound liberation. The world no longer has the power to define you. You no longer live as a mirror reflecting appearances, but as light shining through appearances to reveal truth. You no longer rush to conclude, but let spirit illuminate. That is when you truly live in the Christ mind, the mind that is never deceived by appearances but always faithful to unchanging truth. There is a spiritual power that few ever use, the ability to redefine a situation. It is not the event that determines who you are, but the way you interpret that event. From the same incident, one person collapses while another grows. From the same challenge, one sees misfortune while another discovers opportunity. The difference does not lie in circumstance, but in the inner life. And the secret to the rebirth of consciousness is the practice of awareness, to pause, to shine light within, and then to redefine what is happening. Inner awareness is the habit of observing the flow of your own thoughts instead of letting them unconsciously control you. When events arise, the old mind immediately labels, "This is failure, this is loss, this is injustice." But inner awareness allows you to recognize that is only one perspective, not absolute truth. And in that very moment you have the power to choose a new meaning, one aligned with spiritual principle. That is the starting point of transformation. Imagine you have just lost a career opportunity. The old mind reacts, "I am not good enough, I have been rejected." But in awareness you pause and redefine. This door closed because a better door is opening. This is not an ending but a stepping stone for new advancement. This shift in meaning does not erase the event at once, but it changes your energy. From collapse you rise to steadiness. From fear you step into trust. And with that energy you attract a path more fitting to you. Or in a relationship, when someone hurts you, the old mind says, "They insulted me, I have been diminished." But inner awareness teaches you to redefine. "Those words do not define me. This is simply an opportunity to affirm my inner worth and to forgive." By changing interpretation, you free yourself from the loop of resentment. The event is no longer a wound but a lesson, and from that lesson you mature while the situation gradually transforms. Redefinition is not self-deception, nor is it painting reality with false colors. Redefinition means seeing the event from the perspective of the spiritual law. All things have a benevolent cause. All things can lead to greater good if you allow them. When you affirm this, you step out of instinctive reaction and open the door to creation. And it is this new perception that changes how you act, changes the energy you radiate, and thus changes the outcome itself. Inner awareness is a daily practice. It requires you to become a watchful observer of your own mind. Each time a negative thought arises, instead of letting it carry you away, you pause, look directly and ask, "Can I understand this differently? Can I see the truth behind it?" This question is like a lamp shining into a dark corner, revealing an exit you had never noticed. And in that moment you alter the trajectory of experience. One thing must be remembered: you cannot stop the world from bringing events, but you can choose interpretation, and when you redefine, the event loses its control. It no longer dictates your emotions but becomes material for spiritual training. Just as the blacksmith uses fire to forge steel, you use adversity to forge consciousness. Adversity no longer destroys you. It becomes the tool that builds you. Some may ask, but if the pain is too great, how can I redefine it? The answer is to start small. You do not need to see the goodness immediately. You only need to dare to say, "I do not understand it fully yet, but I trust this has meaning." That trust opens a space for truth to enter, and little by little you will see the new meaning. It is like someone in the dark of night who has not yet seen the dawn but trusts the sun will rise. That trust keeps them moving forward until the light appears. When you redefine, you not only free yourself, you also raise the vibration of the situation. One aware person in a family can dissolve much of the tension in the whole house. One person who redefines in a group can turn failure into a shared opportunity. One who holds a clear perspective can become an anchor for others to find peace again. For the energy of a clear mind always radiates quietly yet powerfully. The wonder is that when you practice long enough, redefining is no longer an effort but becomes reflex. You no longer rush to negative conclusions but naturally ask, what is the hidden meaning here? Where is the lesson? When this reflex is established, your life changes. You pass through events without being crushed. You enter challenges while still holding peace. You see potential where others see only dead ends. And that is the sign you have entered a new life, a life where the Christ mind works within you. Practicing inner awareness is not some distant spiritual exercise. It is a way of living, a way of approaching every moment. Anytime you pause, observe, redefine, you are transforming not only the situation but yourself. And when you redefine enough times, you realize life is not the chain of misfortunes you once thought, but a journey continually inviting you to discover truth. Every adversity is a mirror. With the old eyes, you see darkness. With the new light, you see lesson and freedom. Let this become a habit every day. When facing anything, ask, how can I redefine this to see truth? That question is the key. It opens the door of transformation. And when that door opens, you step into a life where nothing is a burden but an opportunity, where no event is a punishment but material, where you cease to be a victim and begin to be a creator. This is the power of inner awareness, the power to redefine and transform situations, the power to live as a truly free being. Every word you speak plants a seed into the subconscious, but no phrase is more powerful and decisive than the two words "I am." This is not ordinary language. It is the name of being, the doorway, connecting you directly with the divine source. When you say "I am," you are issuing a decree to your inner universe. The subconscious does not argue, does not analyze. It simply receives and makes that decree take form. Therefore, what you place after "I am" will become reality. Human beings often unconsciously use this power to bind themselves. How many times have you heard or even spoken yourself, "I am weak, I am helpless, I am inadequate"? Those words, seemingly harmless, are in fact self-pronouncements, and the subconscious faithfully turns them into experience, not because you deserve suffering, but because the law does not discriminate. It only knows to carry out. Whatever you sow after "I am the law" ensures you reap exactly that. This principle is both just and absolutely precise. But this very principle is also the key to liberation. If you begin to place divine truths after "I am," your life will gradually transform. When you say "I am peace," you are not merely comforting yourself, you are activating a spiritual force that dissolves chaos. When you affirm "I am health," you are awakening the natural mechanism of restoration within every cell. When you declare "I am abundance," you are opening the way for infinite supply to pour into form. "I am" is not a wish. It is a present confirmation, a proclamation that what you affirm already exists within you and is being expressed. The power of I am does not arise from personal will, but from the truth that every human being carries within them the spark of the eternal. Long ago, when asked for a name, the answer was not another label like all others. The voice declared, "I am that I am." It was not a limited definition, but an absolute proclamation. Infinite being cannot be confined in words, it can only be revealed through life. And when you say, "I am," you are touching that same source. Reflect on this. If every I am is a seed sown into the fertile soil of the subconscious, what kind of seed are you sowing most often? Are you sowing fear and limitation, or strength and truth? The soil does not distinguish. It only produces the plant that matches the seed you sow, and you alone are responsible for your harvest. This is not a burden, but a magnificent opportunity. For from this moment you can choose to sow again. You can choose to place after I am the right affirmations, the unchanging truths, and let them grow into a new reality. This is not a game of positive psychology. This is the deepest law of spirit in operation. When you repeat an I am affirmation with consistency, the subconscious accepts it as a new command. And once the subconscious agrees, it adjusts the entire body, emotions, actions, and even outer circumstances to align with that affirmation. That is why many have transformed their lives simply by changing how they use the two words I am. You can practice this in daily life. When you feel anxious, instead of saying I am fearful, pause and affirm I am calm, peace. When facing failure, instead of blaming yourself, I am useless, affirm I am one who is learning, growing, advancing. When tempted to believe you are lacking, declare I am infinite abundance. At first the old mind will resist, but I do not see that. Remember, you are not affirming to convince the eyes, you are affirming to awaken the truth already present. And once truth is affirmed, form must eventually change. It must also be noted that I am is not a casual mantra to be spoken mindlessly. It requires focus, sincerity, and loyalty to truth. If you repeat I am health but spend the day nurturing thoughts of illness, the subconscious will be confused. But if you persist in placing full trust in the affirmation, even when feelings lag behind, the subconscious still records it. And one day you will see the body reflect the truth you have chosen. This is a process certain and unfailing, for the spiritual law knows no failure. The power of I am also reminds you of your true identity. You are not temporary roles, profession, status, possessions, or memories. You are not the labels others attach to you. You are life itself, unfolding the divine idea, expressing the child of the eternal light. When you declare I am, you identify with that essence, no longer bound by the illusion of the small self. This is the greatest liberation. You stop searching for worth outside and begin living from the worth that cannot be lost within. There are times in life when everything around seems to deny you. Others do not believe in you. Circumstances oppose you. Even your emotions refuse to support you. Yet if in that moment you still firmly affirm, I am, you are standing upon a foundation unshakable. You may lose many things, but you never lose the name of being. And that name is enough to recreate all things. The power of I am also transforms how you see others. When you recognize the spark of I am in yourself, you begin to see that spark in everyone. You no longer see them through mistakes, but through their divine identity. And when you call forth that true name in them, you are light, you are love, you are life. You help awaken the seed within them. That is how healing spreads, needing no theory, only recognition. From now on, let I am become the rhythm of your life. Do not let those words slip from your mouth unconsciously. Let them become conscious affirmations, the background music of each moment. When you wake, say, I am new life. When you go to work, affirm, I am creativity. When facing challenge, remember, I am the strength to overcome. When going to sleep, whisper, I am perfect peace. Repeating this day after day, you will see your life reshaped. The power of I am is the key that unlocks the kingdom within you. It does not promise for tomorrow, it confirms for today. It does not take you elsewhere, it brings you back to your true essence. And when you live in that power, you no longer ask, who will I become, but you know I already am. This is ultimate freedom, the enlightenment sought by countless souls. And it all begins with two simple yet magnificent words, I am. There is a place in spirit that human beings often forget, the place of the child. We grow up in worry, seeing ourselves as orphans in the universe, forced to struggle to survive, forced to protect ourselves and prove our worth. But deep within consciousness there is an unchanging truth. You are a child of the source of life, born not to endure but to express. And to live in the consciousness of a child means always affirming truth, even when emotion has not yet shifted, for truth is higher than emotion, and truth is the foundation of freedom. Emotions are like water changing from hour to hour. At times you feel uplifted, at times you feel despair. Some days you are confident, other days you sink into doubt. If you let emotions define your identity, you will be like a sail tossed by the wind. But the consciousness of a child reminds you that identity is not in emotion. Identity is in truth. You are a child of life. You carry light within, and no circumstance can erase that. When you stand on this truth, you can say, "I am," even when emotions are trembling. And it is through that affirmation that emotions will gradually be reshaped. Consider an example when you feel powerless before a problem. Emotion cries out, "I cannot." But the consciousness of a child pauses and affirms, "I can, for the source of strength within me never runs dry." Emotion at first may not believe, but the steadfast affirmation is the seed planted in the subconscious. One day, emotion will be compelled to follow the truth that has been affirmed. This is the power. You no longer live according to emotion, you live according to truth. This does not mean denying emotions or pretending they do not exist. The consciousness of a child acknowledges emotions but does not let them rule. You can say, "I feel sorrow," but the truth is, "I am loved." You can admit, "I feel fear," but the truth is, "I am protected." You can sense, "I feel lack," but the truth is, "I live in infinite supply." Each time you affirm in this way, you are placing truth on the throne and setting emotions in their proper place, mere visitors, not rulers. Living in the consciousness of a child also means you cease begging like a stranger and affirm like an heir. A child does not tremble begging for approval. A child only needs to recognize the inheritance already theirs. When you say, "I am a child of the source of life," you are reminding yourself that love, protection, strength, and creativity are not things you must plead for, but natural rights. This awareness brings extraordinary confidence, not built on arrogance, but on the truth of oneness. In moments of trial, this is the key to freedom. When emotions are stirred, you can pause and affirm, "I am not this emotion. I am the truth beyond it." Affirmation is not denial of reality. It is the confirmation of a greater reality. And that greater reality gradually seeps into emotion, bringing peace. This is the deepest healing, not fleeing from emotion, not being swallowed by emotion, but transforming emotion with the light of truth. Some have lived their whole lives in guilt, believing they are unworthy. They allow that feeling to define themselves. But the consciousness of a child is different. It says, "I am worthy not because I am perfect in the eyes of the world, but because I am a child of the source." Worthiness is my identity, not my achievement. And when this truth is affirmed, guilt dissolves. You no longer live as a stranger, but as a child returned home. The consciousness of a child is also the foundation of trust. The child knows that no matter what happens outside, the love of the Father never changes. Emotions may fluctuate, but this assurance is eternal. When you stand on this foundation, you can pass through storms, yet remain steady because you know you are not abandoned. This trust does not rest on feelings, but on truth already affirmed. To practice the consciousness of a child, begin by paying attention to your language. Each time negative emotions arise, listen to how you are defining yourself. Then replace that definition with an affirmation of truth. If you feel lonely, do not say, "I am abandoned." Affirm, "I am one with the source of love." If you feel like a failure, do not say, "I am useless." Affirm, "I am creation in progress." If you feel afraid, do not say, "I am unsafe." Affirm, "I am unshakable peace." At first you may feel as though you are only repeating words, but persevere. Just as a seed requires time to sprout, affirmation requires time to sink deep. One day you will find that emotions have changed. Fear gives way to peace, guilt gives way to confidence, sorrow gives way to joy. Then you will see the power of placing truth above emotion. The consciousness of a child does not make you insensitive. On the contrary, it allows you to feel everything with greater clarity. You are no longer controlled by emotions, so you can observe them, learn from them, and let them pass. You feel pain but do not identify with it. You experience disappointment but do not drown in it. You know emotions are only waves, while truth is the ocean. Waves may rise, but the ocean remains deep and unchanging. This is the inner freedom every soul longs for. When you live in the consciousness of a child, you are no longer dragged by emotion but shape emotion with truth. You become master of your inner life, not through hardness but through trust in your divine origin. And from that place you can go anywhere, face anything, and remain steady. Remember, emotions are guests. Truth is the host. And you, in the consciousness of a child, have the authority to decide who sits on the throne of your mind. Each time you choose to affirm truth before emotion, you strengthen the unbreakable bond with the source of life. And when that bond is sustained, you no longer live as an orphan in the universe, but as a child walking in infinite inheritance. This is true freedom, true peace, and the very purpose of the journey to return to your rightful place, the place of the beloved child forever belonging to the light. Every experience you have in life is not accidental. It is woven from the thoughts you hold tightly together with the faith you give them. This is the unchanging principle of the law of mind. A thought saturated with faith will take form, becoming reality. What you think and believe your world will reflect exactly, without favor, without exception. Many live without ever realizing that they are operating this law every single day. They cling to thoughts of worry, feeding them with the faith of fear, and their life experience becomes a chain of anxiety. Some endlessly repeat within, "I am lacking, I am not enough, I am unworthy," and the subconscious faithfully turns those words into form. They actually lack, they actually meet rejection. They actually collide with limitation after limitation, not because the universe wants to punish them, but because the law of mind never errs. This law does not lean toward good or bad. It only knows to operate precisely. It is like the soil. If you sow wheat, wheat will grow. If you sow thorns, thorns will grow. The soil does not discriminate. It simply nourishes what you plant. The mind is the same. It receives every idea held firmly with faith, then nurtures it until it manifests in form. If you are dissatisfied with your reality, do not rush to blame circumstances. Look back at what you have planted in the mind and what kind of faith you have watered it with. Faith is the deciding factor. A fleeting idea lacking faith has no power to take form, but an idea repeated again and again with conviction becomes a command to the subconscious. And once the subconscious receives the command, it mobilizes all energy to turn it into reality. You may not be aware, but each day you are self-hypnotizing with affirmations. The question is, are you hypnotizing with truth, or with illusion, with faith that uplifts, or with fear that restrains? Some may ask, but if I am in suffering, how can I believe in something good? The answer is, start small. You do not need to see everything change immediately. You only need to affirm a simple truth, such as, "I am peace in the midst of chaos," or "Infinite supply is still at work." Even if emotions do not yet follow, continue to hold that idea. That is sowing the seed. And one day faith will grow, and when faith is strong enough, the law will respond with a new form. This is not empty consolation. This is a spiritual law as precise as gravity. Notice whatever you believe strongly, you will find evidence for. One who believes the world is full of danger will continuously encounter danger. One who believes life always opens opportunities will continuously encounter opportunities. Faith is like a lens, it shapes what you see, and that very perception creates experience. The law of mind also explains why affirmations hold power. When you affirm, "I am health, I am life," you are planting seeds into the subconscious. If you continue to nurture them with faith, the subconscious will work to make your body reflect that affirmation. Conversely, if you affirm negatively, "I am weak, I am falling ill," the subconscious will also obey. The law does not discriminate. It only knows to execute what you persistently give it. Picture thoughts as electrical currents and faith as voltage. A weak thought cannot light a lamp, but when connected with faith, it becomes strong enough energy to take form. This is why practice is needed, not only to plant the right thoughts, but to charge them with faith. You cannot plant healthy ideas and then water them with doubt. Just as a seed requires sunlight and water, a thought requires faith to become reality. There is something marvelous when you understand the law of mind. You no longer see yourself as a victim. You know that power has been placed in your hands. You can choose new thoughts, you can change beliefs, you can sow a new harvest. No one and nothing outside of you can control the stream of thought in your mind. And as soon as you decide to hold truth with faith, then no matter how things look now, a new form will surely appear. This is also why perseverance is required. A seed does not sprout overnight. But if you remain steadfast, the soil will nourish it, the rain will water it, and in time it will rise. In the same way, a thought saturated with faith needs time for the subconscious to reset reality. If you lose heart, you abandon the harvest. But if you remain faithful, you will see what many call a miracle. And it is not miracle in the sense of mystery, but the precision of the law. Let this principle become your way of living. Observe thoughts, select them, and keep only the ones you want to take form. Water them with faith, with steady repetition, with the certainty that they are already yours. Do not waste faith on illusions of fear. Place faith in truth. You are a child of life. You are the embodiment of abundance. You are unshakable peace. When you live according to the law of mind, you realize you no longer fear the future. You know the future is only the result of the thoughts you are planting today. And when today you sow truth, sow love, sow faith, you can rest assured that the future will reflect exactly that. This is true freedom, no longer scrambling to chase circumstances, but deliberately shaping them with thought and faith. The law of mind is the reminder that you are always a creator. You are never powerless. You only need to decide from now on what thoughts will you hold, and what will you give your faith to. For once a thought is held with faith, form is certain. And when you remain faithful to truth, your whole life becomes living proof that everything begins in the mind and the law never fails. Affirmative prayer is not a plea hoping that some external power will be moved to grant something. It is the conscious operation of the mind placing itself in the right spiritual order so that the law can manifest. This is not a method to soothe emotions, but a clear structure that connects you directly to the source of cause from which form arises. And this structure consists of 4 basic steps: recognition, affirmation, declaration, thanksgiving. The first step is recognition. You begin by acknowledging the absolute truth. There is one principle, one presence that encompasses all without limit, without change. You recognize that this life is the source, the foundation of everything. When you place your mind in this recognition, you step out of the endless cycle of fear and limitation. You no longer pray from the position of lack, but from the position of one standing in fullness. Recognition is the first shift of energy, moving you from victimhood to inheritance. The second step is affirmation. After knowing that the infinite life source is always present, you affirm your unity with it. You no longer see distance. You say, within I and the source of life are one. This affirmation becomes the foundation for every prayer. For if you still believe yourself separate, you will pray in vain. But when you affirm oneness, you acknowledge the power already within you. You no longer stand outside looking in. You step in to live. The third step is declaration. This is the moment you speak forth what you desire to see, as though it is already accomplished. You do not say, I wish I had health, but you declare, I am perfect health. You do not say, please give me peace, but you declare, I am peace right now. Declaration is not expectation, it is confirmation. It transforms desire into truth in the mind, and the subconscious faithfully follows. When declaring, you must speak with the authority of truth, without trembling, without hesitation. For this is not the voice of the small self, but the voice of spirit united with source. The fourth step is thanksgiving. This is not gratitude after things have already happened outwardly, but gratitude beforehand, because you know with certainty that the prayer has taken form in the spiritual realm. When you say thank you for it is done, you are sealing certainty. Thanksgiving is the step of consolidation, the seal of the entire process. It keeps you from doubt, from repeating like one who has not yet believed. Thanksgiving allows you to rest in trust while the law completes the work. Imagine when facing a difficult situation, you sit down, breathe deeply, and walk through these 4 steps. You begin by recognizing that the infinite source of life is here, that nothing exists apart from this life. Then you affirm, I am one with the source, I cannot be separated. Next, you declare, wisdom is guiding me, peace is filling me, the solution is already prepared. Finally, you give thanks. Thank you, for it is done, for this truth is already mine. Afterwards, you rise and act with certainty. That is affirmative prayer. The difference of this method lies in the fact that it does not linger in pleading, but goes straight to truth. It does not focus on the problem, but on the cause. It does not generate the energy of lack, but creates the atmosphere of fullness. Therefore, its result is transformation. The more you practice, the more you realize that no situation is too difficult. For principle is always greater than circumstance, and principle is always at hand through thought. Many mistake prayer as persuading an external power. But affirmative prayer is the training of the mind, aligning it with spiritual law. When the mind is aligned, circumstances change. Not because the world is forced, but because the world is only reflection. Reflection must change when the source of light changes. And affirmative prayer is precisely the changing of the light. Remember this, if you skip recognition, you easily fall into praying from lack. If you skip affirmation, you will always feel distant. If you skip declaration, you will not plant a clear seed. If you skip thanksgiving, you will let doubt spoil the seed. Therefore, all 4 steps must flow together, forming a complete structure. And when you do it rightly, you will see undeniable effectiveness. Practice daily. Do not wait until problems arise to pray. Let affirmative prayer become a habit of living. When you wake up, recognize the encompassing life. Affirm unity. Declare what you desire to express and give thanks that it is already so. When you go to sleep, repeat the same. You will find your mind gradually changing, your subconscious reprogrammed, and your life becoming harmonious. This structure is simple yet never shallow. It takes you from ignorance to initiative, from victim to creator. It teaches you to pray not with lips but with deep awareness. And when prayer becomes a way of living, every moment is an opportunity to recognize, affirm, declare, and give thanks. This is the art of affirmative prayer, stepping straight into truth, speaking with authority, resting in faith, and watching the world change as an inevitable consequence. When you understand and live in this structure, you no longer wonder if prayer will be answered. You know it is always answered, for the law never remains silent. And you will live with the certainty that any thought once held in truth with these 4 steps must take form. Meditation is not only stillness, closing the eyes and sitting in silence. True meditation is an active state where the mind does not surrender to chaotic streams of thought, but is guided and directed by a higher spiritual principle. The practice of active meditation with the affirmation "Christ thinks, feels, acts in me" is a simple yet powerful means of resetting the structure of consciousness so that every thought, emotion, and action is illuminated by the higher mind, instead of being driven by the small self. First, understand that human beings often live in a state of separation. The mind thinks one way, emotions go another, and actions turn in yet another direction. We think what is right but feel fear, and so we act half-heartedly. Or we feel inspired but think with doubt, and then our actions become fragmented. This fragmentation makes life incomplete. Active meditation is designed to restore unity, thought, feeling, and action in one rhythm, one source, one essence. The exercise begins with sitting upright, breathing deeply, and instead of trying to erase all thoughts, you introduce into the mind a single affirmation: "Christ thinks, feels, acts in me." This is the key. You are not trying to control everything yourself. You are allowing a higher principle to shape your mind, your heart, and your actions. This affirmation is simple, but if repeated with focus, it becomes a melody, echoing in the subconscious, tuning every vibration within. When you silently say in your mind, "Christ thinks in me," you remind yourself that true clarity does not come from the narrow self, but from the divine wisdom present here and now. Clouded thoughts, doubts, and fears begin to lose their grip, making way for clarity. The mind becomes like the sky after rain, clear and vast. When you continue with "Christ feels in me," you are shifting the heart away from the control of turbulent waves of emotion, allowing it to merge with unconditional love, with deep peace. Then wounds, resentment, and jealousy gradually dissolve, leaving space for serene joy. And when you finish with "Christ acts in me," you are infusing every action with new strength and meaning. Action is no longer instinctive reaction, but creative expression born of spiritual cause. Active meditation with this affirmation is not meant to detach you from life, but to prepare you to enter life with a renewed state of being. After completing it, you go to work, speak, make decisions, but everything carries the mark of unity. You are no longer torn apart by inner conflict. You act as a whole. And it is precisely this wholeness that makes you magnetic, radiating peace and more effective even in the smallest tasks. To practice, you can dedicate 5 to 10 minutes each morning. Choose a quiet place, sit comfortably, keep your back straight. Do not fold your arms or legs so that energy flows freely. Close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and with each exhale imagine layers of tension and worry leaving the body. Then begin to slowly repeat inwardly, "Christ thinks in me, Christ feels in me, Christ acts in me." Repeat 3 cycles like this, breathing steadily, letting the affirmation seep into every cell. In the first days, the mind may resist. Other thoughts will intrude. Do not struggle. Let them pass and gently return to the affirmation. Like bringing a wild horse back to the stable, patience and persistence are needed. Over time, you will notice change the mind, less noisy emotions, less tangled actions, less hasty, and more importantly, you will feel as if a hidden stream of peace is flowing through the entire day. This active meditation has another profound benefit. It restores awareness of identity. You stop defining yourself by the past, by mistakes, by fear. You begin to define yourself by unity with the source of life. Each time you say "Christ thinks in me," you affirm that great wisdom is not far away but operating within you. Each time you say "Christ feels in me," you affirm that infinite love is pulsing in your heart. Each time you say "Christ acts in me," you affirm that every step you take carries divine creative power. When repeated day after day, this affirmation becomes the new foundation of the subconscious, and once the subconscious has been reprogrammed, it will automatically operate by the new pattern. You will find yourself thinking differently, feeling differently, acting differently without effort. You no longer strive to become someone else. You simply live true to what has always been within you. This is the most wonderful freedom. Remember, active meditation is not escape. It is not temporary comfort. It is a tool to re-establish inner order. And when that order is maintained, outer circumstances will reflect harmony. You do not need to wait for perfect conditions to be at peace. You create peace first, and circumstances will follow. This is the power of steady practice. From today, let the affirmation Christ thinks, feels, acts in me become the rhythm of your life. Let it resound in moments of weariness, when facing decisions, when confronting challenges. Each time you repeat it, you are awakening unity, giving mind, heart, and action a new stream of energy. And gradually you will no longer need to remind yourself much, for it will have become natural. Active meditation is the path back to the center, and that center is nothing other than the truth that you are not alone, not lacking, not apart from life. Life is thinking in you, feeling in you, acting in you. When you live from that place, you will see each day become a song, each moment an opportunity, and your whole life a testimony of eternal unity. The vision of Christ is not like the ordinary way humans see. Physical eyes only perceive the surface: division, suffering, failure, limitation. But when the eyes of the Spirit are opened, they look beyond that veil and perceive a deeper order where goodness is always present and unchanging. This is the vision of Christ, seeing from cause, not from effect, seeing from truth, not from illusion, seeing from perfection, not from the distortion of the senses. Imagine a storm at sea. Ordinary eyes see only raging waves, hear thunder, and feel fear. But if you dive deep to the bottom, you find the waters calm and still. The vision of Christ is that view from the depths, undisturbed by surface waves. When you learn to see with this vision, you do not deny what is happening, but you refuse to let it define truth. You perceive the hidden good, and when you hold steadfastly to that vision, appearance must eventually change. This explains why, when facing sickness, Christ did not affirm disease, but affirmed the health that lay beneath. When confronting death, he did not acknowledge an ending, but affirmed eternal life. When meeting sin, he did not accept condemnation, but saw ignorance in need of illumination. Such vision is not naive optimism, but perception from depth, where law always operates, where goodness never disappears. In daily life, we are easily deceived by appearances. An empty bank account makes us conclude I am poor. A broken relationship convinces us I am abandoned. A failure at work leads us to think I am useless. But the vision of Christ gives us the ability to say, this is only a temporary appearance. The truth behind it is that I live in infinite supply. I am unconditionally loved. I am unceasing creativity. When we hold this vision, we no longer react in despair, but act in faith. And that very faith is the power that shapes a new reality. To train the vision of Christ, you need a habit. Whenever the natural eyes draw a conclusion, pause and ask, this is appearance, what is the truth behind it? If you see suffering, ask what good is being born from this. If you see loss, ask what fullness is waiting to be revealed. If you see darkness, ask what light is present behind this veil. This very question opens a new channel of sight, taking you out of reaction by the senses and into spiritual perception. You will realize that when you see with this vision, you not only renew your own perception, but you also become a source of comfort and healing for others. When you look at someone in error yet still see their potential, you help awaken the goodness within them. When you see hidden order in a chaotic situation, you open the way for that order to unfold. The vision of Christ never stops at mere contemplation. It always brings transformation into reality. A simple example: when insulted, humans usually react with anger because their eyes see only attack. But the vision of Christ says, this is only an expression of fear or ignorance. Their true essence is still light. When you hold this vision, you are not pulled into the spiral of conflict. Instead, your peace radiates and may touch the other, opening the way for reconciliation. The vision of Christ also helps us break free from the habit of judgment. The senses are quick to label this is right, that is wrong, this person is good, that person bad. But the vision of Christ does not stop at labels. It sees that all are in the process of returning to goodness. Therefore it does not condemn but uplifts. It does not close off but opens up. And this vision liberates both you and others. The wonder is that when we steadfastly see with this vision, appearances gradually shift to reflect truth. For appearance is only the shadow of thought. When thought is renewed, the shadow must change. This is not illusion but law. To hold the vision of Christ is to plant a certain seed in the mind, and when that seed grows outward, life will be reshaped. Practice daily. In the morning when you open your eyes, affirm, today I see with the vision of Christ. I see goodness beyond appearances. As you walk the streets looking at people and events, remind yourself, there is good here, even if ordinary eyes do not see it. At night before sleep, review the day. And instead of remembering the negative, look back at each situation with the eyes of the Spirit. What goodness was revealed there? The vision of Christ does not ask you to deny the world, but requires you to go beyond narrow sight, to touch the deeper essence. When you do this, you will feel lighter, freer, for you are no longer dragged around by outward fluctuations. You will perceive an unchanging order where goodness always exists. And from there you live in the world without being bound by it. Remember, physical eyes show only the surface, but the soul has another set of eyes able to see truth beyond form. When you choose to see with the vision of Christ, you do not only change how you see, you change the very world in which you live. For the world is only the mirror reflecting the vision you carry within. See goodness, and you will live in goodness. And that is the sure promise of the vision. Whoever sees as Christ sees will behold this universe shining as the kingdom of perfection. Fear is not an enemy outside of you, but a product of the mind when it allows itself to project. Every time you worry about tomorrow, picturing something bad that could happen, you are painting a false image in your mind and then trembling before that very picture. This is the game of fear. It takes fragments from memory, from habit, from the words of others, and turns them into a scenario in your head. You then look at that scenario as if it were truth, and your heart races, your body tightens, your mind becomes restless. But if you stop, you will see it is all just projection. The trap here is the mind's habit of believing that if I imagine the worst, I will be better prepared. But in reality, fear never prepares you. It only drains your energy, leaving you without clarity. Fear does not make you stronger. It only fragments you. And to break this vicious cycle, you need a tool, the mantra of the single eye. I look with the one clear eye and I see goodness. The single eye is a way of describing spiritual vision that is undivided. Physical eyes see endless opposites, good and bad, safe and dangerous, hope and despair. But the single eye sees only one thing, goodness always present. When you repeat this mantra, you are tuning the frequency of the mind. You are refusing to let fear stage false dramas, and instead, you choose to look directly at unchanging truth. Observe this, most of your fears have never come true. How many times did you worry about losing your job only for everything to turn out fine? How many times did you fear a relationship ending, yet it either continued or opened to something better? How many times did you tremble before a crisis that had not yet happened, only to find that when it came, you had the strength to walk through it? Fear is nothing more than a projected illusion. It carries no prophetic value. It only repeats old scripts to make you forget the truth that goodness is always waiting to be revealed. When fear rises, pause and silently repeat, I look with the single eye. I see goodness. Repeat it until your heartbeat slows, until you feel a clearing in your mind. This mantra does not chase circumstances away, but it breaks the mechanism of false projection. It reminds you that the images the mind creates have no authority to define truth. Only the vision of the single eye, the vision of the Spirit, holds that authority. Consider a practical example. You are about to face a job interview, and your mind begins painting a picture of failure. You imagine stumbling over words, others laughing at you, the opportunity slipping away. Your body starts to shake. In that moment, you stop and whisper, I look with the single eye. I see goodness. Repeating it until the mind stops staging its scene, you find yourself returning to the present. You remember that in the present there is no failure, only the chance to express your truth. And when you enter the interview, you go in with clarity instead of trembling. Another example, when you hear bad news about your health, the mind imagines a chain of dire scenarios. You see yourself losing everything, surrounded by darkness. But right there affirm, I look with the single eye. I see goodness. This mantra brings you back to truth, that beyond symptoms there is unchanging life, that goodness has never left you. And in this spiritual state, your body is supplied with healing energy instead of being drained by panic. The power of the single eye lies in its simplicity. It does not argue with fear, does not need analysis. It simply replaces false images with true ones. When the single eye sees, it does not perceive two realities, only one goodness. And so all of fear's efforts vanish because it has no ground left to cling to. Practicing the single eye daily will gradually create a reflex. At first you need constant reminders, but then at some point, the moment fear begins to arise, the single eye within you will automatically open. You will no longer spend hours breaking free of obsession. A simple short affirmation will be enough to return to peace. This is the sign that your mind has been reset. It is important to remember, breaking the projection of fear does not mean denying difficulties. It simply means you refuse to look at life through a distorted lens. You do not ignore reality, but you see reality with a clear eye, knowing that goodness is hidden behind it. This very vision gives you strength to walk through challenges rather than be crushed by them. Let the mantra become the rhythm of your daily breath. In the morning when you first open your eyes, whisper, "I look with the single eye. I see goodness." During work, when tension rises, pause for a few seconds, close your eyes, repeat the mantra. Before going to sleep, affirm it once again. Each time you do this, you are strengthening a new pathway in the mind, replacing the old reflex of fear with the new reflex of peace. The vision of the single eye not only brings calm to you, it radiates into your surroundings. Others will sense the peace in you and feel less afraid themselves. You become an anchor for them, a witness that goodness remains. And this is how the spiral of the world is truly broken, not only for yourself but for all. Finally, engrave this truth. Deeply, fear can only live on your energy. If you stop feeding it, it will starve. And its only food is the projections of the mind. When you look with the single eye, you stop projecting. You cut off its supply. And so fear dissolves. What remains is one reality only, goodness present here and now. And in that reality you walk with faith, with freedom, and with a light that nothing can obscure. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as an emotional act to forget, to let go, or to try not to think about it anymore. But in its metaphysical essence, forgiveness is not erasing memory, nor is it condoning wrongdoing. Forgiveness is a spiritual work where you redefine the past within your own consciousness. What has happened cannot be changed, but the meaning you assign to it can be completely transformed. And when the meaning changes, the power of the past dissolves, leaving you free to step into the present. Remember this. What hurts you is not the event, but the thought you hold about that event. A harsh word, a betrayal, a loss, all are nothing but images that have passed. But if you attach to them the labels "I was ruined, I was rejected, I was offended," then it is those very labels that become the chains that bind you. Forgiveness does not change the event, it changes the label. It is a metaphysical work because it takes place on the level of consciousness, where all reality is shaped before it manifests outwardly. The past cannot return, but the memory of it still lives in you. Each time you recall it with anger or sorrow, you are allowing the past to keep recreating itself in the present. Forgiveness is the decision from now on. I will no longer allow that memory to define me. I change the meaning it carries. I look back and declare, this was not a failure, but a lesson. This was not rejection, but an opportunity to know my true worth. This was not a loss, but a doorway into a new chapter. Redefining the past is not deceiving yourself. It is reconstructing your perception. Spiritual reality is not defined by fleeting emotions, but by the meaning you choose to hold. Forgiveness is replacing the old meaning with a new one, aligned with the spiritual truth that you are invulnerable, you are whole, you are a child of life. When you redefine, you cut off the current feeding the wound. You reclaim the energy once trapped in resentment. Some say, "I want to forgive, but I cannot forget." Metaphysical forgiveness does not ask you to forget. It only asks you to change how you remember. You can remember the event, but remember it with a new meaning. Like one looking at a scar, it reminds you that once you were wounded, but it also reminds you that you have healed. The wound no longer hurts. It becomes evidence of strength. Forgiveness transforms painful memory into testimony of growth. This work is not easy because the ego wants to cling to the role of victim. It wants to remind you that you were right, the other was wrong. You were hurt, they must pay. But in holding on to the victim role, you give power to the past. Metaphysical forgiveness requires you to decisively release that role, to stand in spiritual authority and declare, "I no longer define myself by what happened. I define myself by the truth that I am a child of the source of light, and nothing external can destroy me." When you forgive, you do not change others, you change yourself. The one who hurt you may never apologize, but they no longer hold power over you. For forgiveness is not about giving freedom back to them, but about liberating yourself. You stop nurturing a toxic bond with the past. You unfasten the chains you had locked upon yourself. Try a simple exercise. Close your eyes. Recall an event that hurt you. Instead of sinking into the old emotion, ask, "If I look with the vision of Christ, what would I see here?" Perhaps you see that what seemed like betrayal actually opened the way for you to discover your inner strength. Perhaps you see that material loss awakened you to spiritual value. Then affirm, "I redefine this memory. It no longer has the power to wound me. It becomes the stepping stone for my growth." Repeat until the emotion changes. This is the metaphysical work, redefining the past by the light of truth. Forgiveness is also a creative act. It not only frees the present, it resets the future. Because if you continue to hold the old meaning, you will unconsciously recreate the same script. But when the meaning changes, the subconscious stops repeating and begins to form new patterns. Forgiveness does not only end the old cycle, it opens possibilities never before imagined. Remember this: forgiveness is not a feeling but a decision. Emotion will follow later once you are steadfast in the decision to redefine meaning. At first you may still feel the pain, but each time you choose the new meaning, the old wound loses strength, and one day you realize you can remember without the sting. That is the moment the work is complete. Metaphysical forgiveness is not a gift you give to someone else. It is a gift you give to yourself. It is the affirmation that you are no longer a prisoner of the past. And when your mind is free, your energy flows into the present, building a brighter future. From now on, whenever the past rises, remember that you have the power to choose its meaning. Refuse the old meaning that paralyzes you. Give it a new meaning that leads you to freedom. Declare in your heart, I forgive. I redefine the past. I am free. Then you will not only live lighter but witness a miracle. Your entire outer life will change to reflect your inner freedom. Forgiveness, in its deepest sense, is the metaphysical work of redefining the past. It is the path that frees you from the chains of memory, opening a new space for pure life to flow. And when you live from that space, you will see nothing that has passed can hold you back anymore. You are free, you are new, you are whole, in this very moment. There are memories that seem to have fallen asleep, yet a single word, a glance, or an unexpected event is enough to awaken them. Anger, hurt, or shame rush back, reminding us that we are not truly free. There are also judgments we think are only aimed at others, but in reality they are chains binding ourselves. Every judgment is a sentence, and the mind clings to that sentence like a loop without end. To live in peace, we need a ritual, a process with order and discipline to release the memories and judgments that have controlled us for too long. The 14-day ritual is the key to unlocking that door. This ritual is not an instant miracle. It is a step-by-step journey, like cleaning out a house that has held too much clutter. Each day is a part of the work: observing, affirming, letting go. When you persist for 14 consecutive days, the mind begins to restructure, the subconscious begins to lighten, and you feel a new space opening within. That space is freedom, where the past no longer has power and judgment no longer imprisons. Day 1 begins with observation. Sit still, breathe, and allow memories or judgments to surface. Do not chase them away. Simply watch them like images passing across a screen. Remind yourself inwardly, I am not memory. I am not judgment. I am the awareness that observes. Just one day of observation begins to separate you from long-held identification. You are no longer swept away but begin to stand as the subject. On day 2, you move to affirmation. When a painful memory arises, say within, this no longer defines me. I am free. When a judgment about someone appears, say, this person is not confined to my thought. They too are a child of the source of light. This affirmation is like dusting the mind, not to forget but to redefine. From day 3 to day 7, you repeat the process of observation and affirmation, but with greater attention. Each evening before bed, spend a few minutes reviewing the day. Did any memories return? Did any judgments rise? Each time you recall, use affirmation to release. This no longer has power over me. I release it into the light. With each day, you will notice the inner weight becoming distinctly lighter. Day 8 opens the phase of forgiveness. Now you not only observe and affirm, but also actively forgive. Choose a specific memory, bring it into the light of your mind, and say, I forgive this image. I forgive myself for ever believing it. From now on, it is only a lesson. Forgiveness here is not emotion, but a decisive choice. You declare it complete, and you no longer carry it. From day 9 to day 11, you dig deeper into subconscious release. This is when deeper memories or subtler judgments may surface. Do not fear, do not avoid. Remember, every memory that appears does not come to harm you, but to be freed. Repeat the process, observe, affirm, forgive. Each time you do, you cut another link of the invisible chain. Day 12 and day 13 are the phase of reaffirming your true nature. It is not only about release, but also about planting new thought. In the morning, affirm, I am light, I am peace, I am freedom. In the evening before sleep, whisper, no judgment imprisons me, no memory binds me. I belong to the present, and the present belongs to me. This is when you replace the old foundation with a new one, planting pure seeds into the subconscious. Day 14 is both closing and opening. Sit still, breathe, recall the entire journey. Feel the difference, the mind broader, the heart lighter, memories no longer heavy as before. Then affirm one final time, From now on, I live free. The past no longer binds me. Judgment no longer holds me. I walk in the light. Give thanks in your heart, for you have completed a metaphysical work unseen by others, but manifest in every cell, every step, every decision. The 14-day ritual does not end on the 14th day. It is the beginning of a new way of life. After completing it, you may repeat it whenever needed, or simply weave it into daily habit. Whenever an old memory returns, remember you have the tool. Whenever judgment rises, use affirmation to dissolve it. This is no longer an exercise, but a way of living, observing, affirming, forgiving, planting anew. The astonishing truth is that when your inner world changes, the outer world begins to change as well. Those who once hurt you may remain the same, but they no longer control you. The memories that once tormented you do not vanish, but they lose power. And when you stop judging, you discover that people around you also change the way they relate to you. Everything reflects the freedom you have claimed. Engrave this truth. Deeply releasing judgment and memory is not a one-time act. It is a continual journey. But with just 14 days of focus, you can create a turning point. From there, you know you can always live in the present, where the past has been redefined, where the mind no longer must adjudicate, where the heart is open for life to flow. This ritual is a gift you can give yourself at any time. It requires no external tool, only honesty and persistence. And when you truly enter it, you will see freedom is not far away. It begins the moment you dare to set down old verdicts and open your heart to a fresh present. In that space, the light of Christ shines, and you live as though breathing for the first time in wholeness. There is a great misunderstanding that most people fall into. They believe that personality is who they truly are. But personality is only a mask formed from memory experience and what others project onto us. Personality shifts according to environment, role, and unhealed wounds. It is like the paint on the outside of a house. Whether bright or faded, beautiful or worn, it is not the actual structure of the house. The true self, on the other hand, is the unique divine idea that life breathed into you when you were formed. It is not borrowed, not the result of comparison, but an eternal imprint that cannot be duplicated. If you look deeply, you will see that the false personality is usually created out of fear. Afraid of rejection, you wear the mask of sweetness, always trying to please others. Afraid of not being good enough, you wear the mask of false confidence. Afraid of being hurt, you wear the mask of coldness and indifference. These masks may help you survive for a while, but they can never bring peace. Because whenever you are alone, you feel weary, as if you are living a life that is not truly yours. The true self is different. It does not come from trying to be someone, but from allowing the divine essence within you to be expressed. The true self does not need to prove, does not need to be recognized. It is like a seed planted whole from the beginning. You do not need to create it, only to remove the stones and soil covering it so it can rise. This true self is the unique divine idea the Creator had in mind when thinking of you. It is an unrepeatable combination of strength, joy, intuition, creativity, and love. When living in the false personality, you always feel the need to compare. You look to others to know who you should resemble, what you should pursue. But when living in your true self, you no longer compare, because you understand that no one can replace your role. In the body of life, you are a unique cell with a function no one else can repeat. When you live in your true function, the whole is perfected. And in that very moment, you feel free with no need to compete. The problem is this: people often identify with the false personality for so long that they mistake it for themselves. Even when they hear about the true self, it feels vague, not knowing where to find it. But the truth is, you have already lived in it during childhood, when you innocently expressed yourself without imposition. You have touched it when doing something with natural joy, forgetting all about time. Those moments are traces of the true self. It has never left you. It has only been covered by roles. To return, you must dare to remove the false personality. This does not mean abandoning every role, neglecting responsibility. It only means ceasing to identify yourself with the mask. You may play the role of parent, employee, leader, but you know you are not only those roles. Your essence is deeper, wider. And when you connect with that essence, you walk with a stability that does not depend on praise or blame. Imagine an artist playing music. If he plays for applause, that is the false personality. If he plays because within him there is a melody longing to flow, that is the true self. Likewise, if you live to prove, you are wearing a mask. If you live to express, you are living in your unique, divine idea. The true self always comes with peace, because you no longer strain to maintain a role. You no longer worry whether others accept you. You know that your presence is already enough because it carries intrinsic value. And from this peace you act with extraordinary strength. Whatever you do, however small, bears a unique imprint. Others may not understand, but they feel it. Something genuine radiates from you. To rediscover the true self, you must practice listening. Spend quiet time each day asking, if I did not need to prove, if I did not need to please, what would I truly desire? Write it down, repeat it, and gradually you will see a red thread weaving through your answers. That is your true self. Follow that thread and you will realize you are not lost. Also observe your day. When do you feel weary, heavy? That is often when you are living in the false personality. When do you feel inspired, light, even if no one acknowledges it? That is when your true self is expressing. Be faithful to those moments. Each time you are faithful, you strengthen the unique divine idea. Do not fear that your true self will make you different and rejected. The truth is, only when you express your uniqueness do you truly belong. The world does not need another copy. It needs you in your original form. And when you live true to your original self, the right connections will find you. The right doors will open. Affirm each day, I am not the mask. I am not the judgment. I am the unique divine idea expressing through this form. In affirming, you are re-establishing identity in the subconscious. And when the subconscious is renewed, your whole life will reflect the new. The true self is a gift that cannot be replicated. It does not come from learning, but from unfolding. It does not come from striving, but from release. When you let go of the false layers, you will be astonished to realize your true being has been there from the beginning, waiting to live. And when you live from that place, you not only free yourself, but also inspire others to dare to remove their masks, so together you may express the infinite richness of life. Every person enters life carrying a unique design, like a spiritual blueprint that has existed since the beginning. That design is not taught from the outside, cannot be copied, and cannot be replaced. It is like the fingerprint of the soul, unrepeatable, unmistakable, and simply waiting to be expressed. Yet this design does not reveal itself automatically. It requires your action, for it is through action that the signs of calling become clear. Sadly, many people spend their lives searching for meaning through comparison. They see others succeed and think they must follow that path. They see society praise a certain model and assume that is the only way to live with value. But when they chase borrowed patterns, they only end up with emptiness. Because true calling never reveals itself when you try to be a copy. It appears only when you act from your authentic center. The first sign of calling is joy. When you do something that makes you lose track of time, when your soul fills with energy that is not just a hobby, that is the sign of your design being expressed. Joy is not the reward, but the compass. It shows you are moving in the right direction. And when you do something that feels heavy, forced, that is usually a signal that you are living outside your design. The second sign is natural ease. This does not mean you need no effort, but it means your effort flows without strain. What is difficult for others may come naturally to you. That is innate talent, the flow of your design. When you act from there, you feel like an instrument being played to the right melody. The third sign is positive impact on others. True calling does not only nourish you, it brings life to the environment around you. When you express your design, others are encouraged, uplifted, inspired, not because you try to persuade them, but because your presence and action naturally radiate light. The fourth sign is inexplicable persistence. There are times when everything around you seems to oppose you, yet inside there is a flame that cannot be extinguished. Even when tired, you return to that work, still sensing a deep inner drive. That is calling, because only the true design creates such endurance. However, to recognize and live in calling, you cannot simply wait. You must step into action. Action is the mirror that shows where you belong. Sometimes you do not know you have a talent until you try. You do not know it is your design until you enter and realize joy, ease, impact, and persistence converge. Action not only reveals but refines calling. It helps you discern what is genuine gold and what is only outer coating. Do not think calling must be grand from the beginning. It may start with small but genuine actions, a gesture of help, a creative idea, a simple joy in doing something for another. That seed will grow as you remain faithful. And in that faithfulness, the design will become clearer and clearer. A common mistake is waiting for absolute certainty before acting. But calling does not appear as a complete map. It unfolds step by step as you go. Each right action opens a new door. Each authentic experience illuminates more of the design. If you sit waiting, the blueprint will remain dormant in potential. If you dare to step out, it will become reality. Remember, calling is not something you choose by preference, but something already planted within you. Your only choice is whether to live faithfully to it or not. And the signs will always be clear: joy, ease, impact, persistence. When these appear, you know you are living in the right flow. The practice is simple. Each day, observe your actions. When does your soul light up? When do you feel energy overflow? When are others uplifted by you? Take note. That is the diary of your calling. Do not dismiss small details. They are the pieces of the larger picture. Once you have recognized the design, live it with determination. Do not let the false personality intrude. Do not let fear hinder. Affirm, I was created for this. I did not come here to copy. I came to express. When you live with that conviction, every resource will come, because the universe always supports what is faithful to its divine pattern. Finally, know that calling is never just a job or career. It is the way you show up, the design expressed through every action. You can live your calling in work, in family, in every conversation. Wherever you express your uniqueness, their calling is fulfilled. And in that moment you feel a deep completeness that you are living not just for yourself, but for the purpose life placed within you from the beginning. There is a truth the human mind finds hardest to accept. Error has no eternal reality. Error exists only as a mist created by the world's thought. It has no root in the law of spirit, no place in the divine essence. When you look at life through the lens of fear, prejudice, and limitation, you will see errors everywhere. But when you look with the light of the Christ mind, you realize error is only illusion, a layer of old programming to be dismantled, not truth itself. From childhood, people have been trained to believe in error as if it were a law. You hear that the body inevitably weakens with age, that success is scarce, that only a few are worthy of happiness. You are taught that failure is proof you are not good enough, that sickness is a natural sentence, that injustice is unavoidable. These beliefs are repeated through words, through culture, through experience, and then imprinted into the subconscious. They become the hidden operating system of humanity, an operating system full of flaws. But when you look deeper, you see that error has no power of its own. It lives only on the energy you give it through belief. When you believe in limitation, limitation becomes real in your experience. When you believe in lack, lack clings to you. When you believe in failure, failure seems to follow you. But the truth is, it is not failure or limitation controlling you, but the very beliefs you choose to hold that build your experience. Error is the product of thought, and thought can be changed. Deprogramming the world's thought begins with awareness. First, you must dare to question the things everyone takes for granted. When someone says life is inherently hard, ask, is that truly the law of life or only a collective belief? When memory says you have failed many times, you will never change, ask, does the past really have the power to decide the present? This act of questioning begins to shake the roots of illusion. Next, you must replace false affirmations with affirmations of truth. When the world's thought says, you are lacking, you affirm, I live in the infinite source. When it says you are not good enough, you affirm, I am the perfect idea of life. When it says your mistakes are beyond repair, you affirm, no sentence binds me, for I live in the freedom of truth. This is not self-suggestion, but the process of re-establishing the law of spirit in the subconscious. The greatest error of humanity is identifying with illusion. Instead of seeing error as a passing shadow, people assume it is their identity. They say, I am a failure, I am weak, I am a victim. But every time they attach I am to error, they lower the divine essence. The truth is that I am can only follow what reflects the nature of the source. I am freedom, I am peace, I am love, I am strength. Every other combination is counterfeit. To deprogram, you need spiritual discipline. Guard every thought like a gatekeeper. Whenever a mistaken thought flashes, you are not enough. You will fail again. Do not argue. Do not get angry. Simply and gently replace it. I am full. I am free. I live in the flow of truth. Repeat this day after day, and gradually the old operating system will collapse, giving way to the new. One crucial point to remember: error does not need to be fought to be overcome. Fighting is still admitting it has power. Instead, you only need to return to the cause, not cling to the effect. When the light is turned on, darkness disappears without debate. When you affirm truth, illusion dissolves. Deprogramming is not a battle, but a replacement process. Remove error, insert truth. On this journey, be patient with yourself. Because you have lived with the world's programming so long, its traces will still appear. But do not be discouraged. Every time you choose truth again, you move one step further. Every time you reaffirm reality, you strengthen the new foundation. Then one day you realize that many things that once terrified you are now just meaningless shadows. As you deprogram, you will also find yourself less prone to judging others, because you understand that what they do wrong is also just illusion they temporarily believe. You no longer cling to distorted appearances, but see the potential behind them. Forgiveness then becomes not a duty, but a natural reflex. You forgive because you know error has no real substance to hold on to. A miracle happens when you truly realize error is illusion. At that moment, the burden of guilt falls away. You are no longer bound in the old story. You rise with an unprecedented lightness, knowing you can begin again at any time. And in that new beginning, you do not start from zero, but from truth. You have always been whole. Let every day be a practice of deprogramming. Upon waking, affirm, "Today I do not live by the world's thought. I live by the Christ mind." Whenever you face difficulty, remember, this is only appearance, not truth. The truth is, I am covered by the law of good. Before sleeping, whisper, all error has been released. I rest in the peace of truth. Error has power only when you believe in it. When belief is withdrawn, it is nothing. Therefore, your task is not to fight error, but to stop believing in it. Stop feeding energy to illusion. Stop defining yourself by what the world's programming says. And instead, choose to believe in the unchanging truth you are created in perfection, without flaw, without lack. Once you live from this foundation, the outer life will change. Limits once thought certain begin to crack. Failures once haunting become stepping stones. Fears once binding suddenly lose their grip. And you understand freedom does not come from changing circumstances, but from changing perception. Error is illusion. This is not comfort, but metaphysical law. And when you deprogram the world's thought, you step out of the invisible prison to live as what you have always been. A divine idea, whole, inviolable, filled with power and light. There are those who believe obedience means following an external command, conforming to a set of rules, or bowing to some authority. But true obedience does not come from outside. It comes from within. It is not coercion but harmony, not blind submission but union with the deepest call of the soul. And it is in that moment that you understand obedience is not the loss of freedom, but the only path that leads to freedom. Obedience from within begins with listening to intuition. Intuition is not loud, not pressing, not argumentative. It comes like a gentle breeze, like a quiet sense of peace, like a certainty that requires no reasoning. Intuition does not need proof, for it is not based on memory or comparison. It is the voice of spirit, the underground stream that guides you in the right direction even before the mind can comprehend. When you learn to trust intuition, you begin to live in spiritual obedience, no longer running after the programming of the world. But to hear intuition, you must pass through the inner desert. This desert is not a barren wasteland of despair, but a space of stillness where the noise of the ego is stripped away. In the inner desert, you no longer cling to self-made plans, no longer chase endless comparisons. You stand in the open, seemingly empty, yet within that emptiness you hear the voice of truth clearly. Just as in ancient times, many spiritual masters went into the desert to meet the living one today. Every person must find the desert within to encounter their own divine essence. Living in a noisy society, you are easily swept into the whirlwind. You must decide quickly, do more, prove yourself. But obedience from within does not follow that pace. It invites you to pause, to listen, and to follow the path of peace. Peace is the clearest mark of spiritual obedience. Any decision that leaves you in turmoil, confusion, or fear is not the true voice. Any choice that leaves within you a sense of calm and steadiness is the right direction, even if outwardly there is no evidence. There will be times when intuition leads you against logic, against others' expectations. But if within you there is peace, trust it, for peace cannot be counterfeited. The ego can fabricate arguments, can construct frightening scenarios, but it can never produce peace. Peace only comes when you touch the principle of spirit, where life operates in order and goodness. Do not mistake obedience from within as something that will make life easy in the worldly sense. At times it leads you through trials, through deserts, through dark valleys. But even in those stages, you carry an inner silence, as if an unseen hand is upholding you. And then you realize obedience is not to avoid hardship, but to face it in the light of truth. Because of this, you walk without fear. Train yourself in the habit of pausing and listening. Before a major decision, instead of rushing to analyze every possibility, find a moment of stillness. Sit down, breathe slowly, and ask in your heart which path brings peace. Then trust the answer that arises in silence, not in noise. This is not laziness, but obedience, because you are choosing to let the inner voice guide you instead of being dragged by fear or desire. Obedience from within also teaches humility, for you recognize that you are not the ultimate center of control. There is a greater order, and encompassing wisdom and intuition is simply the channel of that wisdom. Humility is setting aside the ego to let that wisdom express itself. Humility is knowing you do not need to know everything, you do not need to control everything, you only need to take the next step illuminated for you. The miracle is that when you truly obey from within, the outer life begins to change. Unexpected doors open, the right connections find you, circumstances that seemed random become opportunities, not because you forced them, but because you have aligned your frequency with the law of spirit. When you are in harmony within, the outer world naturally reflects that harmony. Remember that obedience does not make you small. On the contrary, it makes you great in the divine sense. For when you allow the voice of spirit to guide you, you are no longer limited by the narrow understanding of the ego. You are connected to the infinite source. You no longer act alone, but act as a channel for a power greater than yourself. And that is freedom. Freedom from the small self, to live in boundless vastness. Each day, create for yourself a small desert, just a few minutes of silence, without phone, without noise, without plans. Sit, breathe, and simply whisper, "I am ready to listen." Then do not expect a voice, do not force an image, just hold peace. Guidance will come at some point, perhaps as a sudden idea, a sense of certainty, or a meaningful coincidence. When it comes, obey. Step forward even if you cannot yet see the entire path. Obedience from within is the art of living under the guidance of intuition, the courage to enter the inner desert, to find silence, the recognition of peace as the only measure of truth. And when you live by that art, you are no longer shaken by the world. You carry within a compass that never misleads. And that compass will take you to where you belong, to the place where your unique divine idea is expressed, where life flows freely, and where peace becomes the natural rhythm of every moment. The greatest disorder in human life does not come from external adversity, but from inner fragmentation, thinking one way, speaking another, acting in yet another direction. When thought does not align with speech, and speech does not align with action, energy becomes scattered. The subconscious grows conflicted, and the outer results only reflect that chaos. To step into spiritual freedom, to live in the creative power of Christ, you must first learn consistency. Consistency between what you think, what you say, and what you do. Thinking, speaking, doing are the three levels of expression of one single flow. Thought is the seed, word is the planting, and action is the first fruit. If the seed is already faulty, then no matter how eloquent the words, they cannot save the harvest. If the words are contradictory, then however enthusiastic the actions, they only further disorder the soil. But if thought is pure, word is truthful, and action is complete, then the inevitable result is a life full of fruit. This is not moral philosophy, but a spiritual law. That law operates impartially, without need of proof, without waiting for acceptance. Begin with thought. Every idea you hold in mind is a seed sown into the soil of the subconscious. The seed, repeated often enough, will take root, sprout, and grow into a tree. Thoughts of fear will grow into a reality filled with fear. Thoughts of lack will bear the fruit of lack. But in the same way, thoughts of peace will create circumstances of peace. Thoughts of abundance will bring abundance. Thus, thought is never harmless. Every repeated thought is a silent prayer, and your life is the answer. Words follow thought, yet they are also the powerful bridge that brings the seed from within into the world. When you speak, you affirm, you plant again into the subconscious, but this time with double force, because there is sound, vibration, emphasis. Complaints, criticisms, sighs are not meaningless noises. They are declarations, they are negative plantings. Whereas affirmations, positive words, prayers of affirmation are positive plantings. That is why you must learn to speak as Christ. Speak little, speak true, speak words that build, words that open doors. Action is where everything converges. The thought you nurture, the word you plant will all be tested in action. If you think you are a child of life but still act as one afraid, the subconscious understands that the belief is only a slogan. If you say you believe in abundance but act as though you are always lacking, then the seed has not truly taken root. Action is the evidence. The subconscious does not listen to excuses, it only sees consistency. When thought, word, and action move together, the subconscious registers that you truly believe. And when belief is established, the law responds. A consistent life is not one without mistakes. It is a life in which each day you realign yourself. When you notice your thought has strayed, you bring it back. When you see your words contradict you, correct them. When you see your actions out of line, you adjust. Like a farmer tending his fields, pulling weeds, watering the good plants, you faithfully keep the soil of your consciousness clean. And gradually the fruit will be clearer evidence than any theory. In this process, prayer plays a pivotal role. Prayer is not pleading but affirming. Prayer is not listing what you lack, but declaring the truth that already exists. An affirmative prayer has a clear structure: recognition, affirmation, declaration, and thanksgiving. First, you recognize the all-encompassing presence of the living one. Next, you affirm the truth relevant to the situation: I am the child of the source of light. All goodness is already mine. Then you declare the matter as accomplished. I receive peace, abundance, strength right now. And finally, you give thanks, because thanksgiving is faith that it is already done. Each time you pray in this structure, you are aligning the three levels: thought, word, action. Thought you affirm in silence. Word you voice into sound. Action you step out as if it were already true. Prayer like this is no longer a ritual, but the law of creation. It turns your life into a consistent flow, no longer fragmented. Imagine a person who each day plants within themselves clear thoughts, positive words, complete actions. After only a time, their life will change so unmistakably it cannot be denied. That is not a miracle, but inevitability. And you can be the same, because the law shows no partiality. Every thought is a seed, every word a planting, every action the first fruit. You reap what you sow. This is an unfailing law. Ask yourself today, what seeds am I sowing? Do the words I speak reflect the true belief in my heart? Do my actions reinforce the thought I have chosen? If the answer is no, do not despair. Simply begin again right now. Plant a new thought, speak a new word, take a new action. Consistency is not built in a day, but formed by small choices repeated without end. And when that consistency becomes a way of life, you will see a power rise within you. No more inner conflict, no more opposing voices pulling you down. You become a pure, strong stream. When thought, word, and action all come from the cause, from truth, then the outer world is nothing but a mirror of that wholeness. You will no longer see prayer as a separate act, but as natural as breathing. For every thought you hold, every word you utter, every action you take has already become prayer. That is the destination, living consistently, no longer fragmented. Every thought is a seed, every word a planting, every action an affirmation. And when the three unite, your life becomes a living prayer, evidence that the spiritual law works precisely and that the light of Christ has found a channel to be expressed through you.